Hello and welcome to the Royal Beat Book Club. I'm Laurence Llewelyn-Bowen, and in this series we're doing the literary heavy lifting for you, reviewing the best royal books in print so you know which ones truly deserve a spot on your marvellous, elegant and commodious bookshelves. Today we're diving into the world of royal fashion to look at how clothes and accessories have the ability to tell stories, set trends and even spark controversy. Long before Princess Diana's iconic wedding dress, or indeed Princess Anne's sunglasses that went viral, the royal family's style has always been a topic of fascination and significance. To unpack all of this, or indeed undress all of this, I'm delighted to be joined by three fabulous fashionistas, or two fabulous fashionistas and one fashionisto. Royal contributor at CTV News, Afua Hagan. Cultural historian at Manchester Metropolitan University, Dr. Benjamin Wild, and author of The Times British Royal Fashion, Jane Eastoe. Lovely to have you all here in the studio. Now, we've seen members of the royal family become huge style icons by setting fashion trends far beyond the palace gates, and it's something that's gone on for centuries. And when I think of male royal fashion, I think of King Charles II's wardrobe. Ben, this is extraordinary because, I mean, obviously, we've had fashionable monarchs for centuries. You know, someone like Richard II brings the handkerchief from France, has incredibly long shoes, so he has to tie them to his knees when he goes upstairs. But Charles II, a bit like looking in a mirror for me, as you can see quite plainly, he basically stops fashion in its tracks overnight and restarts it in a completely different way.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the comparison between Charles II and yourself, we could go even further, because if it weren't for Charles II, probably you wouldn't be wearing the wonderful three-piece suit that you're wearing now. And it is largely because of this great man here that we have the three-piece suit.
Because, I mean, he was a very stylish guy.
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
he used style, he used architecture, he used painting, he used music, in fact, as well. But he particularly used clothes to get the point across, because he was rebuilding the monarchy after Oliver Cromwell had kicked it out. So he needs to sort of reinvent it. And he wants to give it a kind of a completely different slant, and a slant that doesn't feel as if it's paying too much lip service to the fashions of France.
Exactly so, and I think that's exactly the point. With Charles II, almost what we're seeing here is a rebranding of monarchy. What he wants to do, yes, is continue those traditions, but also make the point, I'm not my father. And the best way of doing that is getting rid of the doublet, the hose, and introducing what at the time was regarded as a very simpler style of dress. And that was the vest, and still the hose, but what essentially we would regard now as the embryonic trouser. And so
the hose start getting longer, though.
Exactly,
the round hose start actually getting further and further to the knee. Do you miss the doublet and hose, Jane? I mean, I'm sure, you know, actually, perfectly... I mean, you imagine Ben in doublet and hose, he'd look amazing.
He'd look fabulous.
That's a different show, though.
It is a different show, yeah, dressed like Charles II. It's got format all over it. Oh, amazing.
What would worry me is my husband would embrace them with great delight.
Would
be seen out.
Yes.
He looks very jealously at, you know, royal occasions where they have capes and fancy headdresses.
So he likes it a bit schmancy.
Yeah, a feather bonnet is
that would be his thing.
Yes.
That would be his thing. Yeah, because I think the things. I mean, we've got an image now. So you know, big sleeves, lots and lots of ribbons, and then suddenly he embraces this idea of it's called a Persian coat. Here we go. But it's much more, isn't that much more elegant?
It is, and much more streamlined. Definitely easier to wear, easier to fit in a carriage when you're getting in one, rather than all these blouson sleeves and things like that. What I think is really interesting as well is how much of these shapes and these silhouettes are kind of still around today.
Yes.
I mean, even if we look back at the coronation, for instance, in 2022, we did see some very similar, you know, it talks about the hats with the feathers and everything, and these kind of silhouettes, particularly in the cloaks and in the outfits that, say, the Prince and Princess of Wales were wearing that were made for the coronation. They still hark back to these kind of, you know, the old silhouettes, the kind of older shapes that, you know, the royals
Not great for going to the supermarket in either, are they?
Not perfect for going to the supermarket.
And you say, you know, getting in and out of carriages, but I think, you know, getting in and out of an Uber would be a bit of an issue for some of those robes.
It definitely would, but I think it's when we have those particular royal occasions, you know, like a coronation, like a funeral perhaps, that's when you see these silhouettes coming back and making a comeback.
And so you feel it's important, that kind of recognisability. In fact, all you're saying about branding, that you want to brand royalty in a certain way, but you also want to keep the politics moving slightly. So
Exactly
for Charles,
so, yeah.
he wants it to feel, reincarnated, really, doesn't he?
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's exactly to your point about this being a kind of revolution in dress.
Yeah.
That, as you said, when we're thinking about coronations, this is the kind of archetypal look we go back to.
But the funny thing is that, this is the beginning of the three-piece suit. So
It
this
is, yeah.
1670s, and yet I'm basically wearing its great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandson today. I mean, all power to the man.
Exactly
What an
so,
influence he
yeah.
had. And in fact, so talking about this idea of innovation and about modernity, I think the Duke of Windsor was a very interesting person in all of this. Because, Jane, I mean, he in 20th century terms, for a start, he always wanted to be seen as a great moderniser, didn't he? But that definitely comes out in his clothes.
He definitely did. And whilst he actually used to say publicly he wasn't terribly interested in clothes, this was quite clearly not the case at all, because the man had the most extensive wardrobe and was deeply particular about what he wore. But he followed the example of his grandfather, really, of Edward VII, and he wanted to be comfortable. He wanted a soft style of tailoring, and he was fearless in the way he mixed pattern. So he loved a Fair Isle sweater.
Well, it's hilarious, because we look at that now and it looks so sort of, quite quiet.
Yeah.
It's kind of a bit librarian, but actually at the time, that's like, even down to things like the
turn-ups.
The turn-ups. I mean, that was turn-up gate.
It enraged George.
Enraged George V.
George V. He was absolutely. He used to exclaim about them. He was outraged that he wore brown shoes in town.
Yeah.
Brown suede shoes, I think it was.
We're all now trying not to look at Ben, because that's what he's wearing.
Style icon.
Ben
Yeah, I know. There
will
you go.
allow it.
You're following in his footsteps.
I am.
Quite literally.
Yes.
Quite literally. But you look at this, Ben. It's interesting, this idea of comfort, because obviously he is coming out of a period, the Victorian period, the Edwardian period, where everybody was very corseted. Men were as well. And they had collars up here and stuff. So comfort actually does feel like a modern issue,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also with the drape cut suit that we see him wearing here, that was very much popularised in the beginning of the 20th century, largely because these styles have been seen during the First World War, what officers are wearing. But also, of course, after the First World War with the big influenza epidemic, that sparks this great health craze. And so that interest in health, the natural proportions of the body, clothing that's comfortable, that reflects the silhouette, all of that, I think, is underpinning this shift that we see in what is being worn here.
But because it's not just him, is it?
Yeah.
So Wallis Simpson, the incredibly controversial American divorcee that he marries instead of becoming king. She was absolutely, she really had it nailed, didn't she, about fashion?
She absolutely loved fashion, and she said that she knew that she wasn't very much to look at, so she expressed that in her clothes and what she was wearing. That's how she wanted to be seen, and that's how she stood out.
This is a Givenchy dress.
Yeah.
And if you took off the monkeys playing instruments, which she specifically requested, you could put Audrey Hepburn in that dress if it was plain white. But what this was why she wanted monkeys embroidered on her dress, playing instruments, I don't know. It looks fabulous on her.
Well, this is an era of surrealism, isn't it? And this is an era where, and she was particularly interested in the sort of the slightly weird, phantasmagorical, surreal elements of the 18th century. And they always had little china figurines of monkeys playing instruments and stuff. And she sort of went out of her way to find things that were a bit quirky, a bit baroque.
But I think that's also very indicative of who they were as a couple. They were very much all about going their own way.
Yeah.
Literally.
Well, they had to. They had ploughed a furrow, and they were going to, they were going to dress to impress with it.
Exactly, and they did, and they didn't have to go through the protocols of, you must wear this for this occasion, and you can't have a hemline this high or this low. And so I think they really expressed that both in their fashion. I think when there was an inventory done of their fashion, after they passed away, the Duke had a kilt for every single day of the week. That's
Why are you
so
surprised?
impressive.
Is that a wrong thing?
I wish I had a kilt for every single
I've got
day.
two.
Amazing. And you know, I think it was something like her jewellery went for sale at Sotheby's for $50 million.
Well, we're going to get to her jewellery in a minute because there's a lot of kind of signalling, I think, through accessories. But I think one of the interesting things here, I mean, this is the absolutely famous Elsa Schiaparelli dress with the Dali lobster.
I love
in a
it.
slightly unfortunate place, I
Well,
think.
that was deliberate.
Do you think?
That was deliberate. Dali used to use in his work the lobster as a sexual symbol, and he was slightly involved in the positioning, I understand, of where it went on the dress.
Basically pin the lobster on the Duchess.
It was
It's
designed.
like a party game.
It was designed to sit between your legs and to stop at a crucial point.
Fair enough.
And that was very saucy. And she wore it in it. It was part of her trousseau, and she wore it for a shoot in Vogue.
Yeah.
And it's a massively famous, important dress.
But she's obviously doing
But
a lot of
that's
signalling
great.
here, isn't she? I mean,
Yeah.
and you think of the Elizabeth, the late Queen Mother, at this point. Very safe looking. I mean, you know, there's her own particular sort of glamour, the soft pastels and the kind of, you know, slightly winter halter, slightly kind of, you know, but a bit cosy, you know, a bit comfy. And of course, Wallis very famously always referred to the Queen Mother as Cookie because she said that she looked like the cook.
Yeah.
And there she's obviously going, listen, I'm outside all of this now, so I'm going to be racy.
Well, when this appeared, as you said in the Vogue shoot, people at the time said this is another reason to hate Wallis Simpson. You know, she is probably, regardless of what we think of her, at the time, one of the most famous or infamous women in the world, provokes a constitutional crisis. So I think it's exactly to your point about going her own way. But as much as, for me, there's bravado in this, I think there's also a sense of her probably being quite frightened, probably, you know, very much in uncharted territory. So this is her way of almost a kind of
So you're saying this is like armour? This is
think
almost
so,
like she's
yeah.
and this works, you know, with what you're saying about her being so impeccable but quite brittle and kind of she's empowering herself by using fashion to kind of punch you between the eyes before she
think
walks
so.
into a room.
Yeah.
Fascinating. I mean, so let's move on to the late Queen and Prince Philip, because they're not always put up there as fashion icons at all, are they? But I mean, they had a very strong sense of their own personal style, and actually, he was quite well dressed, wasn't he, Ben? I mean,
He was. You know, and I think if you think of, you know, Prince Philip and just think of that, you know, the name, you think of uniforms, you think of as beautifully demonstrated here, the tweed, the single-breasted suit. And actually, you know, quite nicely matching here with the Queen. But normally, I think he's physically a couple of steps behind Elizabeth II, but also sartorially too. If we think of her in the blocks of colour, he does tend to recede. But I think that's a recognition of his constitutional duty, but also you know, the fact that it represented his style. He is a naval man, a military man.
Fascinating point there, Jane. I mean, if Wallis Simpson is using haute couture as this kind of, you know, weaponised armour, Queen Elizabeth, the late Queen, was using colour as a way of really, you know, hitting you between the eyes as she walked into a room.
I think they all use their clothes as armour, actually.
Yeah, interesting point.
I think they absolutely do, and they're very much regarded as work clothes.
Yeah.
To perform for them, and somewhere along the line the Queen got this idea that she had to be seen, and I think she famously said she wouldn't be recognised if she wore beige. I think sometimes she went a little bit over the top with it. I think sometimes she could have, because...
Well, she must have got to a point where she thought she'd run out of colours.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like, you know, what can I do next?
Yeah.
You know, sort of, let's make up a new colour for you, ma'am. Because the thing is here as well, and I think you can really see this here, is, you know, actually the accessories do so much of the work here, don't they?
Yeah, and she was never seen without hat, handbag, you know, comfortable shoes, the pearls, like you said, the brooches. I mean, when it comes to hats, the Queen and the Queen Mother especially, you know, kept milliners in business, let's be honest. Without them wearing hats, nobody was wearing them. But the brooches really do speak for themselves as well. But this is the thing as well, is that the Queen always had to be so sort of... classic with her style. She couldn't afford to be fashionable, because if she was fashionable, she would go out of style.
Yeah.
So she didn't need to be fashionable, and she set her own trends, and that trend was, I'm colour blocking, everybody will see me. Remember, she was quite little as well. So she didn't need the colour to stand out in the crowd.
One of the things I always think is quite interesting is she was quite pattern-averse. And you said colour blocking.
Yeah.
It always was colour. You very rarely saw her in pattern, which I thought was very interesting.
Yeah, it's true.
Now, we can't talk about royal fashion without talking about wedding dresses, because, of course, that's the moment when, as a royal, you can really, pull out all the organ stops. No, but there's a point. I mean, up until Queen Victoria, wedding dresses were quite just sort of something fancy that you would wear on a normal day-to-day basis. It's Queen Victoria that really invents the idea of the icon wedding dress.
The amazing thing with Queen Victoria is nobody thinks about her as a trendsetter.
No, we don't.
You think of this. I mean, she really was tiny, and dressed in black, of course, for huge swathes of her reign after Prince Albert died. But in her wedding dress, apparently, she wanted to wear Honiton lace to support
the lace
industry in Devon. And so she chose white to go with it. And it was quite a radical statement. Most royal brides had worn a lot of silver, a lot of gold, a lot of heavy embroidery. And comparatively, her dress was actually quite simple.
What do you think, Ben? I mean, do you think there's a sort of, again, a bit of politics in this, in that, she's trying to push herself forward now she's the new broom, literally the new broom.
Yeah.
We've had all of her uncles, George IV, William III. They've all been very kind of, fast living and a bit naughty.
Yeah.
Here she is, she's young, she's kind of virginal, and she's got, she wants to make her own statement, doesn't she? And actually, looking simple is a good thing in this context.
I mean, it's really very much, I think, a political statement. I mean, you alluded to her uncles, deeply unpopular.
Very.
Her coronation just a few years before is known as the half coronation because it was scaled back because of concerns about spending and profligacy, which again was associated with her uncles. So I think wearing a lot of lace, stimulating the industry within Britain, as Jane said, is very much about this is a monarch who understands the needs of her people and will put them first. So I think it is very shrewd in terms of how she's presenting herself at these great ceremonies.
Another very iconic dress just about to come out of the carriage, and I wonder if you can guess which one it is. It's the late Princess of Wales, Princess Diana, because this was, I wasn't there because I wasn't invited, but I was very much there watching it as it came out of the carriage.
Yeah.
I was pretty surprised by that frock.
And I think a lot of people were. I think people weren't expecting the huge sort of 25-foot train, was it? All the flounce, is that a word? All the
flounce is a very good word for it.
There was just,
speaking as a flounce merchant, shares in flounces have gone up.
I mean, so much ruffles and material. I mean, done by the Emmanuels, and it was really, she made a statement with that dress, a statement and a half as well.
But Jane, I mean, all the fashionistas hated it, didn't they? I mean, the commentators thought it really didn't work.
They did. They didn't say so much on the day.
No.
It was quietly...
It was very loaded.
Quietly drip, 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 and it very quickly became regarded as a little bit of a mistake. Oh, it was so crumpled. Oh, it was
I never minded the crumpled thing, but I think that photograph is very good. You look at the bodice, that doesn't feel like a good fit to me at all.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I always thought that it just didn't seem to fit.
And the shoulder seems to sort of flop. But having said all of that, in terms of what it's saying about her and the event, it's all about the romanticism, isn't it?
I think it was very important. I actually loved it when it appeared. I thought, wow. And when people are critical about it, often because it was creased, but, did she know? Did the Emmanuels know it was going to be stuffed into a tiny little carriage? Maybe they'd have taken that, thought and run with it. But she was just 20. She was tall. She was quite embarrassed. What else was she going to wear but something fabulous that made her feel special?
I mean, the incredible clothes horse that she became. She wasn't that then at all.
No, she wasn't.
I mean, the thing that surprised me, and we're of the same generation, was just how trendy it was. Because this is also the moment of, the Blitz. This is New Romanticism. This is when Boy George and Steve Strange are wearing the ruffles and the grouse feather in their beret. This suddenly felt quite weird that this royal wedding, it looked like it had come out of the David Bowie Ashes to Ashes video, wasn't
Yes.
it? It was a funny moment.
No, it was the Emanuels were hugely fashionable designers, and they absolutely pulled everything that you would expect out of the bag. So I think it was unfairly criticised, and she, it was a big romantic statement, and she actually, I actually don't much like that photograph. I don't think it really
doesn't do a lot for it.
justice.
No. It's too.
I think it was.
It was better in motion.
It was bigger.
Yeah.
It worked in motion,
Yeah.
and she did.
It looked like it had a milk
breathtaking.
float under it. It was so large, just sort of going down the aisle like that. But let's move on to. The next wife of King Charles, Camilla's wedding dress. Because, thinking about just the sheer attention that the first wedding got, the second wedding, of course, is going to get, all of that and some. She could so easily have got it wrong. Did Camilla get it right in this outfit?
I think she did get it right. It was described as being respectful and elegant, and I think it does that. We're looking here at a married couple, both marrying for the second time. There's that history, both obviously with the Princess of Wales, but also, of course, we've mentioned it already, with a former royal wedding in the 1930s when that had kind of ended not so well.
Yeah.
So I think there is a sense of that history, how it's going to sort of play out. So being restrained, being mindful of that wider sentiment and how this is going to be read in a multiplicity of different ways. For me, I think this worked then. I think it works now looking back.
Yes.
Great hat as well.
A great hat.
Every one of us could wear that hat and look
Yeah,
amazing.
I might wear it later on. But I
Take it in turn.
I think what's also notable about this outfit is that she became the first royal bride to re-wear an outfit.
Yes.
She wore it for an engagement a few years later. And obviously, yes, she could do that because it was this kind of style. You couldn't really imagine, Princess Diana going to open a children's hospital wearing a dress with a 25-foot train. That's not going to work.
Well, it would get caught round all the kind of hospital
all the
equipment.
beds and
could go horribly
the
wrong.
doors.
You could knock something over with it.
Exactly. So I
very
think,
badly.
and also it's probably the start of when we talk about sustainability within fashion within the royal family, which is something that the younger royals now do much more of. Re-wearing outfits.
So she was sort of blazing a bit of a trail with that.
She was. Again, in many ways, Camilla did. Yeah.
Well, let's move on to Kate's wedding dress because that was that obviously again had to be a tremendous statement. Very interesting choice of designer because when you think about it, Alexander McQueen. Actually, in the noughties, it was all very naughty, wasn't it? It was very confrontational, very anti-establishment. Lee McQueen sadly died a couple of years before the wedding, but one imagines that certainly the impact. His mother, of course, which was a phenomenal royalist, would have been so touched at the idea that his brand was used by Kate, and she looked. It's so pared back and elegant. But doesn't it fit beautifully? Yeah. Jane, look at the fit on that.
It is absolute perfection, the way that it was fitted. And quite a lot of people said that, although it's not the same as Grace Kelly's dress, that they were perhaps elements of the inspiration. And it's quite interesting to think that that was designed by, of course, a Hollywood designer, Helen Rose, who knew how to make a spectacle and statement without, she played it very carefully, she didn't go over the top. And I think that's what they got right with
this dress. They got the scale and the ornamentation without it being kind of panto, without it being fancy dress. But the weddings, of course, royal weddings would be nothing without a tiara.
Yes. Obviously. And when it comes to the wearing of tiaras, it's really a rite of passage for a royal bride. And it's
Well, it sort of literally is, isn't it? Because actually, you can't wear a tiara before you're actually married, can you? And you can only wear it. The only time you can wear it is literally when you're going to your wedding.
So,
absolutely.
But then in a weird kind of thing, it doesn't work in hotels. So I don't know why that. But it's like the small print. It says NB doesn't work in hotels.
At all.
So strange. But it is. There are some spectacular royal tiaras around. Do you have a favourite?
I think there was. The tiara that the Queen wore at her wedding, the fringe tiara from Queen Mary, I think was really beautiful. But I think for me, as much as they are wonderful objects in and of themselves, it's the stories. Because I think, it is this rite of passage, but it is demonstrating the importance of dynasty and succession. the importance of the femininity of the wearer, but also the power that represents within the institution of monarchy, I think is equally important. But yeah, those family traditions and what that says about the intimate connections.
They're also, I mean, what I like about them is they're kind of everyday crowns.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you couldn't really wear a crown every day of the week, but you could wear a tiara. And
You could wear that every day, yeah.
I mean, that's quite, you could. You just sort of slip out to the shops and that, no one would notice.
The other thing that I think is quite interesting about them is that both Catherine and Meghan chose to wear slightly smaller tiaras. I think Catherine's had been originally belonged to the Queen Mother, and Meghan's was one of Queen Mary's, and they're not great big towering.
They're more like circlers, aren't they, or bandeaus?
Yes, yes.
Let's talk about, you know, modern fashion. Let's talk about where the royal family is now going with its relationship with fashion, which is absolutely fascinating. I mean, we've got a picture of Meghan there. I mean, she definitely had a very different take on the way that she wanted to be seen as a royal duchess, and it's a very, very American look, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. You know, sort of wearing lots of neutrals and black and white. And then she talked about when she was in the royal family, not really being allowed to wear a lot of colour and things like that. And now we see her, now that she stepped back as a working royal, wearing lots of red and all these kind of daring colours. And I think as well, what's been really interesting is to see Meghan in Colombia, when she's been in Nigeria, wearing sort of, you know, local fabrics, like in Nigeria, wearing the ashioke, which is like a traditional woven fabric, which is just beautiful, and seeing her Colombia wearing local designers. I think she's very good at that, as is the Princess of Wales.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, I think
high
it's,
street.
yeah, I mean, it's quite difficult, Jane, isn't it? Because the thing about the Princess of Wales, Kate, is that she really, you could put her in a sack of potatoes and she'd look amazing. I mean, you know, no fault on anybody, you know, no disrespect on anybody, but she just is someone that wears clothes absolutely brilliantly. And she can wear ordinary clothes absolutely brilliantly, which is very in keeping with the way that the royal family are at the moment.
Yeah, she is a designer's dream, and it is slightly infuriating that she can indeed put on anything.
Yeah.
And you know, the high street benefited hugely when she started going out in Reiss or Zara or whatever, although it has been said that probably she was having some nips and tucks because those pieces of Zara or Reiss or wherever else fitted her
Super well.
yes.
Super well. Why would you not?
But, you know, they do serve an important function to promote fashion.
Yeah.
And it's really good that they use their influence. And as you say, Meghan was extremely skilled, actually, at pulling out little designers, little-known producers. And that's so important to different companies. And I think the task of being now a royal woman in particular, it used to be with Charles II, everyone looked at the royal men. Now, who cares, frankly? But
oh, come on, William's been trying. He wore trainers with a suit the other day, didn't he? And we were all sort of faintly appalled, but, you know, I can see what you're trying to do there, mate.
But it is...
I mean, look at it there. I mean, you know, Ben, I mean, it is, you know, it really is very interesting, I think, that you've got to now get... I think she has now got to get this balance right.
Yeah.
We've got to be able to see her as a mum, haven't we? You know, yes, it's amazing when you were saying about the coronation, that when she puts on all the robes and, you know, and that was a lovely moment that they weren't wearing tiaras at that point, that they actually just had, you know, they had flowers in their hair. Really lovely kind of, you know, quite subversively simple thing to do. But it's not easy getting that right, I would have thought.
Absolutely, and I think the mother of her children, yes, the mother of the nation. And she has a little bit of liberty now, I suppose, in terms of being able to patronise different fashion brands, as does Meghan Markle. But as monarch, if, you know, not to say that she's going to sort of completely sort of follow in the footsteps of the late Queen, but there's a sense of, I suppose, our expectations.
Interesting point. So you think there might be a kind of a gear change? Literally, no pun intended.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. But one of the big things that she's also done, I mean, in fact, they're all doing it, and we've mentioned this with Camilla, but this whole idea of sustainability, and that there's almost like a kind of a deliberate pride in being able to reuse but, you know, very obviously, it's not like they sort of change anything. You know, actually, you remember this one? It's an oldie, but it's a great one.
And very good at upcycling. Like,
Yes.
you know, for the Christmas Carol concert at the end of 2024, she wore like a red coat that she'd worn before, and she upcycled it with a bow. And she's done that a few times with outfits that, you know, we haven't seen her very much in 2024, but when we did see her Trooping the Colour, again, it was a dress that was upcycled with a bow. So very good at reusing things, very good at promoting sustainability. But it's been estimated that the Princess of Wales is worth £1 billion to the fashion industry through things she wears that then people will buy, people want to buy into. But that's also going to pass down to Princess Charlotte as well, and already has a bit. You know, when you see, you know, the kids wearing something, it will sell out. Everybody
But they're kind of
wants
also
it.
little mini-me's. I mean, what was so interesting about the recent Carol concert, you had Kate again re-wearing the red Alexander McQueen number, but with the bow, just to make it a bit different. But then Catherine...
Love the mime of the bow, by the way, because that really brought it alive.
I try. But then Charlotte wearing another red dress, and then the boys wearing red ties. So you've got that
Well, I
kind
mean,
of corporate
George is
look.
absolutely morphing into women.
Oh, yeah,
I mean, they're absolutely identicals. I mean, it's great talking about how wonderful they are and how well they do and how much they get it right. But let's talk about when they get it wrong, shall we? Just because we can, just just like for a little bit of fun, really, can't we? Because they, I mean, I think it's unusual to find something that the late Queen didn't get quite right. But I think one of the most famous ones, the King and the hole in his sock.
Yes.
Ooh.
Oh dear.
I don't. You know, that doesn't worry me, Terry.
See, it doesn't worry me either. Because I think that shows he's putting his own socks on.
Yes.
Because, I mean, a valet isn't going to give him a hole,
No.
you know. That shows he does actually put his own socks on.
I mean, who doesn't have holes in their socks sometimes? It would be abnormal if you didn't.
Sometimes my holes join up, you know, and they become more hole than sock. I think it's quite kind of old money. And then there's the whole weighted dress issue as well, because I think this is incredibly common. The idea of putting little weights on the hem of your dress.
The other thing that the Queen used to do was they always used to make a lining that kind of was tight-fitting. So there is a photograph of her coming out of a plane with her skirt blowing up, and you can quite clearly see there's very nice, discreet, in the same fabric underneath, so she can't have a disaster.
Yeah, fair enough. That's why she's always smiling.
Exactly.
She knows she's pinned down.
She knows she's covered.
She knows she's totally covered, no matter what happens.
There was one outfit. She went on a trip to Canada, and Hardy Amies put her in this little jaunty peaked cap with the fabric in it, matching the fabric in the outfit, which was a little bit obvious. But the press went berserk, and they just said, this is terrible. What does she look like? She shouldn't be seen in this. Hardy Amies apologised to her after the event, and she just said, I can't see what all the fuss was about.
Bless her.
But it was a rare error when the press really laid into
Well, maybe
her.
she just did it to mix it all up a bit, you know, to just sort of get everyone to appreciate, you know, the fact that normally it's good. It's like putting a little bit of sriracha in your wardrobe.
It is also, I mean, the one thing I do feel about the royals is we have to give them some room for error, because often they're changing clothes 5 times a day.
Yeah.
They're photographed wherever they go, not just by photographers, but by the members of the public. And none of us have to go through that. I can go out with holes in my socks. I can go out in whatever I want to wear. Nobody will tell me off because it's not British, because the colours aren't right, because it doesn't suit me. It's not bought in the UK. I can do whatever I want. They are scrutinised.
But it's very. I know, one of the things I think's really come out of this show is the fact that this is why they use it as armour. That actually they use fashion so thoughtfully, you know, that actually, yes, I mean, it must be appalling to be, you know, constantly read like you're a barcode. But at the same time, they're understanding that, and they're, you know, thinking very, very long and hard about what works for them. They're, you know, making political statements every now and again, and this goes right the way back to Charles II. You know, you can actually let the world know, you know, how you're feeling just through the medium of how you wear your brooch.
Exactly.
Who knew? I mean, that's great, isn't it? That's it for today's show. Fascinating. Thank you so much, you A-listers, you. My very, very fashionable guests, Afua, Ben and Jane, and to you at home, please keep the conversation going on socials at True Royalty TV. Thank you very much for watching.